this Orwellian in nature approach that Europe has taken, the hostility to free speech, to satire, to...
And yet here we are, first hearing back. We're not talking about the AI platforms that are leading kids to self-harm. We're not talking about the algorithms profiting off of teens' eating disorders. We're not working together to hold big tech accountable.
A pastor gets arrested for what he said, but the guys who attacked him don't.
And I want to talk about that as it pertains to the UK, the EU, and certainly the US. Mr. Price, Prime Minister Starmer said that the UK does not have a free speech problem. Do you agree with that statement?
No, I do not.
In what ways do you disagree with the Prime Minister?
We have seen numerous prosecutions in the United Kingdom for totally non-violent speech. We have clients my own organisation is acting for who have been arrested for silently praying, for offering consensual conversations, for preaching about the gospel. And I can go on. There are numerous and numerous examples.
12,183 prosecutions, I think, is at least what I've read. Does that sound about accurate to you?
That sounds accurate.
Which is a 50% increase from pre-pandemic levels. What does that tell you about maybe the focus of the British government as it pertains to speech right now?
Sadly, it shows that the United Kingdom, just like the rest of Europe, has entered a spiral of censorship, and it's getting worse. And it's gotten to the point where even our oldest and closest ally, the United States, has had to intervene and point that out. And as I said on numerous occasions, I'm extremely grateful to all of you for doing that. But the problem, frankly, is being now compounded and set in stone by things like the DSA from the European Union and the Online Safety Act in the United Kingdom.
Well, let's talk about the Online Safety Act for a second. I mean, I think it maybe is intended to protect children, and I think everyone lauds that. Mr. Farage talked about that nobody, right or left, wants their child exposed to bad content online. But it's been talked about, and you've seen this in your practice, used as a weapon to target speech that maybe the government finds uncomfortable or disagrees with. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We've seen, for example, Section 62, which is designed to protect children, being used to censor videos of protests near asylum centres. And so once you reach a point where content is restricted on the basis that it is political, we're moving well out of any kind of zone of protecting children into essentially censorship.
No, we're here talking about how other countries are being too mean to big tech. It's gross. Professor Kay, thanks for being here. Can you briefly describe how the EU's Digital Services Act regulates social media content for children?
So the DSA is a very big piece of legislation, a big regulation, but it gets to exactly the point that you're making, which is the DSA is the result of a years-long process of democratically Europe trying to figure out what's the response to the massive power of big tech over their information environments. And so to give one example, they provide a mechanism that actually requires those companies that are considered the very largest platforms and search engines to do an assessment of the risk that they cause in the context of illegal content, which could include child sexual abuse material. That is really only doing that basic risk assessment that we should imagine all companies would do.
Exactly.
And then based on that, they're actually obligated to take mitigating measures against them. So that's one example.
Yeah, I mean, this is bare minimum stuff here, right? Bare minimum.
Yep.
Risk assessment. What are we subjecting our children to?
Correct.
And so in your assessment, does the EU prioritize protecting kids and teens from content related to suicide and self-harm?
So the DSA is not content specific, right? It doesn't require any company, for example, to take down any particular kind of content. But in the risk assessment provision, it's pretty clear, and if you read the negotiating history around the DSA as well, it's pretty clear that this is one of the key issues that concerns Europeans and thus concerned the regulation as it was adopted.
A pastor gets arrested for what he said, but the guys who attacked him don't. Lucy Conley said things that she shouldn't have, probably. Not probably, definitely. What would Mr. Farage say? Intemperate, statements, but she took him down. She got more prison time than young violent offenders got. And Miss Rose Doherty, I believe, was praying silently outside, and she got charged. Is that all accurate?
The only point I would add is Rose Doherty, 74-year-old grandmother, was arrested for holding a sign that said, "Here to talk only if you want."
Oh, so she's praying silently, not saying anything, just a sign, right?
Just a sign, sir.
Oh, wow,
Yes,
wow. And if an American comments on this in a way that the DSA defines as disinformation, misinformation, hate speech, they can have their speech taken down as well. Is that accurate?
That is entirely accurate within the terms of the DSA.
That's the state of play. Mr. Reed, I would just point out when Ms. Verkunen, the lady who took Mr. Breton's place, when she was here talking about how the Digital Markets Act could impact companies, she said, you know, we don't have anyone in Europe complaining about the law. And my response was, that's because you don't have any companies. The way you defined it according to Mr. Price, and you understand, it only includes American companies and one Chinese company. Is that right?
Well, the irony is there are a lot of smaller European companies that are complaining about the DMA. Not the idea that they need a competitive landscape, it's that it focuses on entirely the wrong thing.
Yep.
You hit it on the head. A lot of our members come here to get money to go back there to build products.
Yep. I'm sorry, they called votes. I do want to move quickly, and I shouldn't have went over. Mr. Garcia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're here today for two reasons. One, because Republicans are in the pocket of big tech, and two, they want to distract us on their war on free speech and expression in the U.S. We all remember Trump's inauguration. The tech oligarchs were all there. Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Cook, Pichet, and they looked like they won the presidency because they did. And they got what they paid for. Since taking office, Trump put out an AI action plan that could have been written by big tech, dropped enforcement provisions against tech companies, and tried to unlawfully fire 2 FTC commissioners who fought to hold these companies accountable. By the way, one successfully got back to work today, first day back. That's Rebecca Slaughter. Trump and his loyalists in Congress are also serving their corporate overlords by attacking the countries that actually try to rein in big tech. That's not innovation, that's corruption and oligarchy. The American people do not want corruption and oligarchy. They want leaders who have the backbone to stand up to big tech, to stop massive surveillance and protect data privacy and uphold freedom of speech. But the people least qualified to talk about freedom of expression are the ones that currently are cracking down on the First Amendment. As my colleagues have described, Trump and his fellow Republicans have banned words that the federal government can use. They've extorted media companies to punish news coverage they don't like, and they've weaponized the immigration system against people who have other views. They've suppressed economic data and other information that contradicts the propaganda machine and targeted medical research even and museum exhibits, all because they're afraid of words, history, and the truth. At the same time, Republicans are leading a historic crackdown on expression, and they're holding propaganda hearings like this and telling us to reject the evidence of our eyes and ears. Mr. Kaye, thank you for being here today. As I mentioned, this administration is using the immigration system to suppress speech, as we've seen Mahmoud Khalil, Mohsen Madawi, Mario Guevara, and many others being targeted and detained because of their speech. And in Guevara's case, his reporting. Could you please comment on the ongoing weaponization of immigration to trample freedom of expression?
Yes, each of those examples are accurate. And I think that as we've heard so many different examples of crackdowns or alleged crackdowns on different kinds of speech in the UK or in Europe or in the United States, we just have to be honest that there are crackdowns happening in the United States. It's not it's entirely accurate to say these kinds of content-based restrictions and punishments in the US are very serious interferences with freedom of expression, and it would just be important to acknowledge that as we're talking about other kinds of restrictions as well.
Thank you for that. It's really important that we not allow arsonists to pretend that they're firefighters, and we must not let Republican lies prevail. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. We will do one more, then unfortunately we have to recess for votes. And I know you guys have been sitting there for 3 hours. You need a well-deserved restroom break. We'll see if we got some refreshments for you back there, hopefully. Mr. Harris is recognized, and we'll take a quick recess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this important issue, and to all of you that have shared on this panel today. Greatly appreciate your patience, excuse me, and your thoughtful answers. I've served as a pastor for 36 years, and so obviously I have a heightened sensitivity to the whole issue of when governments and institutions begin to talk about hate speech and the censorship of hate speech. And I guess one of the questions that I'm concerned about today, and I'll ask you, Mr. Price, because of your experience in this area, particularly with ADF, would you consider posting a Bible verse hate speech?
No.
And is saying there are only two genders hate speech?
I certainly wouldn't consider that hate speech.
And so, yet the UK's Online Safety Act, among other things, is requiring companies to take actions against content which, quote, incites hatred against people. And I guess my question is, again, Mr. Price, who is in charge of determining what constitutes content which incites hatred against people?
The regulator of the Online Safety Act is Ofcom, which is the statutory body, and the legislation itself includes what they call priority content. That's content that would be age restricted. Encompasses things that are illegal outside, or in real life, not online. The problem with that is that our pastor, Dia Moodley, that I mentioned earlier, he was threatened. He was arrested under the Public Order Act, which talks about stirring up religious hatred, for comparing Islam and Christianity. And so, on the basis that the Online Safety Act restricts something that's deemed to be a crime outside, that kind of content would be restricted, and I think that's extraordinary overreach.
And is hate speech, quote, objective?
Well, this is where I might just pick up on something Professor Kane said earlier in relation to hate speech. The problem with it is it's a tautology saying that incitement to hatred is speech that creates hatred.
And I just ask, is silent prayer coercive?
No, sir.
And should silent prayer and holding signs result in legal consequences?
Absolutely not.
So when pro-life activists are prosecuted for engaging in peaceful prayer and protest, what kind of message does that send to other pro-life activists in the UK?
I think it shows an extreme degree of intolerance. It shows police overreach, and ultimately, we have to go back systemically. The problem is these laws that are being created. They're incredibly vague, overbroad, whether it's by European regulators or UK regulators, and they're having a real impact on people's lives and their human right to free speech.
Well, as this committee has discussed previously, the FACE Act here in the United States has been used to go after pro-lifers, and I just pray we don't reach the point that such activists are arrested for silent prayer, as we've seen there. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.